Chapter 3, Foundation. 3 days later. The day Fluttershy was supposed to be on Mare Snuff. Chisaki had dug graves for the 3 rapists who tried to take away Fluttershy before he killed them. After that, both of them sat on a coach as a small box TV ran in front of them. There were only 5 different channels on equestrian television, all numbered numerically. 4 of the 5 channels are all Mare Snuff, and number 5 is the news channel, which is rarely used by other ponies. Most of the news was mainly highest bidders on mare auctions from the previous day, but sometimes the news channel had something important to say. And today was one of those days. "Thank you all for coming today," the hermaphrodite mare reported said as she humped a mare that was hidden under her standing desk. "Most of you are wondering, what happened to my show? Or why has it been cancelled? I have both good and bad news. The good news is that only the episode was cancelled and not the entire show. But the bad news is that Fluttershy, who was supposed to be Mare Snuff's next contender, has gone missing along with 4 regular rapists. There is now a bounty on her head. Snuff her yourself, or turn her eye." Chisaki cut the TV off using its remote, as Fluttershy whispered out an "oh no." Chisaki leaned forwards, interlocking his fingers as he began to travel into deep thought. "I see no good way out of this, Flutters," Chisaki said, as sorrow plagued his voice. "Do you trust me?" "Why wouldn't I trust you?" Fluttershy said. "You've saved me once before, I know you'll be able to do it again." "Thank you, Fluttershy," Chisaki said, as he brought his left hand to his face as his thumb and finger touched the temples of his head, only leaving his left eye exposed, which was full of sadness. "I'm sorry I had to put you through this." He brought his right hand over and placed it gently around Fluttershy's neck before he used his quirk on his friend. Several days after Fluttershy's disappearance, rumors had spread that Fluttershy was still alive because she was hiding from the male/herm supremacy which plagued Equestria, but details on the rumors were not consistent. Another rumor had spread that an odd creature had moved into Fluttershy's old cottage after she left. Maybe, just maybe, if the rumors were true, the newcomer would know what happened to Fluttershy and lead them to her. The 5 friends were filled with hope, but Twilight's overworking emotions caused a scar to spasm that she had gotten when she was studying under Celestia's mentorship. On their way to their friend's cottage, 3 new missing posters of mares, that were recently processed by the Apple family and ready to be sold off, were placed on a billboard that had 5 pre-existing ones. Fluttershy's poster was among the 5. AJ shuddered as she remembered all the painful screaming from the mares that was caused by her big brother's hands, as he pulled each of their teeth for toothless BJs. The prize for finding the missing non-hermaphrodite mares was absolute permission to rape them, and there was a note at the bottom of each poster encouraging the rape them in public so others could watch. When they had gotten near the cottage, blood drained from their faces as they faintly smelled rotting pony meat. The smell was muffled, like a decaying body was resting behind a non-existent door in front of them. As they moved towards the cottage, the smell grew stronger. Worry grew rampant among the 4 of them as they considered the possibility of Fluttershy being already dead, and that's what they were smelling. Arriving at the front door of the cottage, the pungent smell was almost bad enough to make them scrunch up their noses. Twilight extended an arm before she knocked on the door. No one answered. "Maybe they're not here right now," Rarity said. "Are you kidding me?" Rainbow asked, frustrated. "I took us nearly an hour to get here with Twilight. I could have made it here in about a minute, maybe even less if I flew here. You try living your life after having survived a belly pop." Twilight shuddered at the memory of how she barely survived all those years of being raped by the solar alicorn. "What's all this ruckus about?" an unamused voice said. Descending from above the house, Chisaki landed in front of the group of ponies. Twilight had felt something finalist about him, but she couldn't tell what. From what she could tell though was that he wasn't from any major race or species in Equestria. He did wear a beak-like mask, almost imitating how griffins look. Though probably his most defining feature, despite the lack of fur, was his yellow wings, which had what seemed to be some sort of external muscle which was as dark as the hearts of the caribou. "Excuse me, but are you the new owner of this house? Applejack asked. Yes, I am, he said. My name is Chisaki, how may I help you? The 5 ponies were shocked by his politeness, a male of any race being polite to non-hermaphrodite females, especially ones of a different species, was almost completely unheard of in modern-day Equestria. Twilight was the first to realize the awkward silence that they had created. We came here looking for Fluttershy, she was the previous owner of this cottage. Twilight said, we were hoping that you might have any clue on what had happened to her. The previous owner? Chisaki said, scratching the side of his head, I've seen her before, but I never really met her other than a brief encounter meeting as she was being dragged off. Sorry, I couldn't have been any help. Oh, Pinkie Pie said disappointedly, as her mane deflated, I was hoping to see her one last time before I'm snuffed. Come on girls, Rarity said, let's go, we've already had our stay. Chisaki turned his back to 5 ponies he'd just lied to about not knowing Fluttershy, before he began to return to behind the house to continue tending to the few animals that remained. He'd hoped that the 5 mares would just leave him alone, because the less that knew the truth, the better. No, Rainbow Dash scowled at Chisaki, drawing attention to herself, you're hiding something, and I'm not leaving until you tell me what has happened to Fluttershy. Rainbow's 4 friends looked between her and Chisaki with fear in their eyes. If a mare had bad-mouthed a stallion, or said something even the slightest bit out of line, it was law that the mare's master or the one being spoken poorly to should rape them right then and there. Chisaki tilted his head downwards, making his eyes unable to be seen because of the shadows which covered them. When he lifted his head back up, the ponies were surprised to see the same neutral expression instead of one that implied he was going to rape them. You ponies sure are perceptive, Chisaki shrugged them off, but I'd rather not explain it in public, others could overhear us. He led the 5 ponies into Fluttershy's cottage. It was cluttered with empty animal cages. A thin layer of dust covered several different locations of the house. Muddy footsteps tracked around the house showing that it hadn't been clean in a while. Excuse the mess, Chisaki said, as he started closing the curtains of the house, I haven't had much time to clean with all the work I've been doing. We don't care about the mess, Rainbow Dash said, you still have to tell us where Fluttershy is. You'll see her again, be patient. Chisaki walked over to the side of the stairs as he began to push in a wall and began sliding it to the side. A crudely made hidden passageway with hardened clay walls was revealed as it descended in darkness. Chisaki grabbed a candle stand before he took a match out from his green coat pocket and struck it against the wall as he lit the candle. Let's go, make sure you close the door behind you. Chisaki said, the less ponies who know about what I'm going to show you, the better. Once Twilight had closed the hidden door behind them, Chisaki returned to speaking. The truth is that Fluttershy and I are close friends. And I wasn't going to risk her with a bunch of ponies I don't know, Chisaki said, but after she told me all 6 of you were friends, it was the least I could do. She told you about us? Rarity asked, how is that possible? We only met you today, and Fluttershy has been missing for several days now. I guess I forgot to tell you that we have a shared conscience. Chisaki said, it helps her hide away better. Wait, Pinkie Pie said, you two can talk to each other through your minds. In a sense, yes. Chisaki said, as he approached a steel door covered in mud and rust. Whatever you see beyond this door, must be kept a secret. If word gets out, all our hard work would be in vain. As the 5 ponies nodded their heads, Chisaki opened the door. Inside was a large cavern with the roof standing at least 10 feet off the ground. Several steel bed frames with mattresses on them were lined against the walls. The only reason why they could see anything this far down into the ground was because of a shoddy electrical work with light bulbs hanging by their cords from the ceiling. 2 mares rested on some of the beds while a third tried to tend to their sickly forms. The 5 friends didn't believe their eyes, those mares were the ones in the wanted posters. Chisaki walked over to the ill-looking mares and helped the only decent-looking one wet towels to cool off their fevers. What is this place? Twilight asked. This is the headquarters of the resistance group known as Shady, Chisaki said. I am its founder, and Fluttershy is its co-founder. Speaking of Fluttershy, Rainbow said, where is she? I know where she is, Chisaki said. After this, you will see her again. Once Chisaki had finished drenching the towel in cold water, he had gotten up from beside the bedside. He moved to the center of the cave-like room before he ungloved himself. Raising the bare hand to his face, he placed his fingers and thumb on different sides of his head, only leaving one eye revealed. The five could see the strain he was putting on himself as his veins in his face began to bulge through the skin, turning into rough lines and edges. Chisaki fell over after his body had split into two different ones. The mares couldn't believe their eyes as they saw their missing friend return into existence. Fluttershy groaned as she tried to stand on her feet without stumbling. It feels so awkward to be back to normal again. Once Fluttershy had spoken, her friends began to swarm her like flies. They all gave her some sort of display of affection, whether it be attempted hugs, heartfelt words, or even just spilling tears seeing her again. Blood began pumping as each second was more and more proof that their friend was alive, but as it began to pump, Twilight's scar began to spasm. RRGH. Twilight clenched her gut in pain. Twilight, what wrong? Fluttershy asked worriedly. My scar. Twilight said, it feels like it's gonna burst again. Oh my. I completely forgot. Fluttershy said, Chisaki, you have to do something. Get her to one of the beds. Chisaki commanded. Twilight's friends tried their best to pick her up while she was writhing in pain. The pain was so great that she was crying while being partially dragged over to the bed. Once she was over on the bed, she was in a fetal-like position, clasping where her scare was hidden under her clothes. Chisaki removed the garment to get a better look at the scare, and by the looks of it, it was an exit wound that seemed to go deep into her as it began to bleed around the edges. Grab me a towel. Chisaki demanded. Rainbow rushed over to where the sickly mares were and grabbed a clean towel from one of the bedside tables. Rushing back, she tried to apply it to the bleeding scar. Chisaki snapped out of her grasp and wadded it up into a small ball before he placed it over the screaming mouth. What was that F? Rainbow tried to scream at him, but was quickly silenced when he moved his hand down to where the scar was, causing Twilight's abdominal section to explode. Time seemed to stand still for seconds on end, blood droplets stayed still in mid-air. Twilight was letting out a muffled scream as her body tried to arch forwards, but without a spine it was impossible. Then all the blood and guts that came out of her were returned to her insides as time began to flow normally again. When the towel was removed from Twilight's face, she let out a small coughing fit. What did you just do? Twilight asked in between coughs. I destroyed your abdominal section to the molecular level, then I removed all the scar tissue and stretched out your nearby body tissue to cover for the lack mass which your scar made up. Chisaki said, I recommend you don't sleep on your stomach for the next few nights so that it can heal. This was only possible because our body has many similarities, despite the subtle difference I found in Fluttershy's biology books. The time spent in the giant cave of a room slowly became hours before it was already nightfall. Twilight wanted to leave to pick up some books that would help Chisaki in his end goal, while the other four had their own reason, but he refused to let anyone out of the Shady safe haven. Despite being somewhat new to Equestria, he knew that mares going out in the dark heightened the chances of them being raped. Applejack tried to explain that if she wasn't back on her master's, who was also her brother, raping Rax, she'd be raped so hard that she'd be snuffed before they were done with her. But eventually Chisaki convinced them all to stay because they need extra hands to help with the ill. A few hours later, same day. Sweet Apple Acres. Looks like Applejack is not on the raping Rax like she's supposed to be. Big Mac sighed, I'll make sure to rape her really good this time.